morning. We have general questions. Question number 1, Jean Urquhart.
Thank you. To ask the Scottish Government how it's encouraging people to purchase fresh local produce.
Cabinet Secretary Richard Lockhead.
It is vitally important that the people of Scotland have access to the fantastic range of food and drink products that we have right here on our doorstep, and this offering is available to all of those who visit our shores, of course. That's why over the next 3 years we are investing £3.2 million to support Think Local and the Community Food Fund, Scottish Food Champions to encourage our tourism businesses to offer Scottish produce, Sourcing for Growth, which is about bringing together our local supply chains, and prestigious food and drink events across the country as well, such as our annual Scottish Food and Drink Fortnight. And we are ramping up our efforts so that our local food and drink sector is ready for 2014 and beyond, and all of the opportunities that this presents.
Jean Urquhart.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that reply. Can I also ask what action the Government is taking in spreading a culture of belief that by buying local produce, which often is seen as having an expensive price tag, in fact can be the most economical way of feeding a family, and that might be processed through the education system or other aspects of buying and using local produce?
Cabinet Secretary.
I think the member raises a very important issue, which is of course a very topical theme at the moment, and it is indeed the case that families can have affordable, healthy, nutritious meals using local ingredients when they cook at home, and food education has got a large role to play in that. And indeed, Michael Russell, the Cabinet Secretary for Education, and myself are working together on a number of food education initiatives, at least to ensure the next generation are able to do that. But of course, we have to find ways of encouraging all families to source more local ingredients. We're working on some of the initiatives I mentioned in my original answer, as well as with retailers and our primary producers in the wider food industry in Scotland. So it's certainly something we support.
Question number 2, Alison McInnes.
To ask the Scottish Government under what circumstances it will give direction to the Scottish Police Authority.
Cabinet Secretary Kenny MacAskill.
The Scottish Government provides direction to the Scottish Police Authority on an ongoing basis in a range of different ways. We have a strong working relationship with the SPA and continue to support the authority on a daily basis, and the Scottish Government also has a range of specific responsibilities which include agreeing and putting in place an appropriate framework document, setting the SPA's strategic priorities, approving the SPA's strategic police plan and setting the SPA's annual budget.
Alison McInnes.
Thank you for that response. Ian White, an SPA board member, has been quoted as saying, "We," that is the SPA, "want to be able to say, yesterday you charged over there and started a murder investigation and pulled in all these resources. Did you need to do that? And other than that, you shouldn't tell them," that is officers, "who to arrest. There aren't any no-go areas." Are we now to expect that the SPA will at every turn try to second-guess senior investigation officers? Is this really the kind of role that the Cabinet Secretary envisaged for the SPA, or does he agree that he might need to invoke his power of direction? During the passage of the bill, the Cabinet Secretary refused to define operational independence.
We've got the question, Ms McInnes. Thank you. Cabinet Secretary.
Well, I've had no need to invoke a power of direction. I've been working closely, as have my staff, and indeed have the Chief Constable and his staff. I would say that I disagreed with some of the comments attributed to Ian White, but I do hold him in high regard when he served as the convener of the Police Board in Lothian Borders. These are matters that will be sorted out between the Police Board and the authority, but it's quite clear within the legislation that operational matters are for the Chief Constable. That's how it was, that's how it is, and that's how it will remain.
Question number 3, Jamie Hepburn.
Ask the Scottish Government what importance is placed in Education Scotland's findings on local authority plans to close schools.
Cabinet Secretary Michael Russell.
Presiding Officer, the Schools Consultation Scotland Act 2010 makes it clear that educational benefits should be a key consideration when an education authority proposes any significant change to its school estate. When proposing a school closure, there is a statutory requirement that the Education Authority provides an educational benefits statement, and for Education Scotland to provide an independent report on educational aspects. The Education Scotland report, along with the Education Authority's proposal paper, the consultation report and any representations received are all taken into consideration when determining whether or not Scottish ministers should call in a school closure proposal when it appears to them that the Council may have failed in a significant regard to comply with statutory requirements or take proper account of a material consideration.
Jamie Hepburn.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for the answer. Where Education Scotland finds in any proposal that it does not give sufficient consideration to the impact of closing the school in the local community, that it may have a detrimental impact on the education of some young people, particularly those with additional support who require careful transition planning, and that stakeholders are justifiably concerned about the timescale for implementation and the lack of evidence on possible detriment to young people's education, and that the concerns raised about the walking route are also justified, would the Cabinet Secretary expect any local authority to significantly amend its proposals?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, once Education Scotland has submitted its report, which would contain information of the nature that the member has specified, the Education Authority must then explain in its final consultation report how it has reviewed its proposal in the light of the Education Scotland report and any other representations it has received. In determining a school closure case, I will, of course, look very closely at the Education Scotland report and the authority's response to it, along with the other relevant documentation.
Fiona MacLeod.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Further to that, can I ask the Cabinet Secretary if Education Scotland will give any weight to the informal consultation, which has been deeply flawed and caused a great deal of misery across East Dunbartonshire Council?
Cabinet Secretary.
Internal consultations are not part of the legislation, and therefore they do not form a part of this process. The informal consultation being undertaken by East Dunbartonshire Council invites views on a number of options. The Council has a statutory duty to ensure that there is adequate and efficient provision of school education in its area and is accountable for the decisions it takes. But I understand the Council hasn't taken any firm decision. If East Dunbartonshire formally proposes to close any school, then there is a clear statutory process in place that requires the Council to undertake a public consultation as set out in the Schools Consultation Scotland Act 2010. And, Presiding Officer, it wouldn't be appropriate for me to comment on any aspect of an informal consultation, given that I may have a statutory role to play in any subsequent process.
Can members just check that they don't have their phones very close to the electronic equipment, because I'm getting feedback in my ears. Question number 4, Margaret McDougall.
Thank you. To ask the Scottish Government what protection there is for young children in cases where allegations of sexual abuse have been made but no evidence has been found.
Minister Aileen Campbell.
In all cases where allegations of child sexual abuse have been raised, social services, the police and other relevant agencies must ensure the safety of the child and identify whether any ongoing actions are necessary to protect the child and others. A range of issues are considered, including whether the child needs counselling or therapy. Local authorities assess each case on its own merits to determine what level of support and protection is required by the child, both for the immediate future and in the longer term.
Margaret McDougall.
I thank the Minister for that answer. As you will know, in some cases, younger children do not respond well to interview, and for one reason or another, a physical examination is not carried out. Despite a family member still having concerns for the child's well-being, no further investigation is carried out by the police or social services because they say there is no evidence to directly prove any abuse is occurring. In cases such as this, when effectively that cycle of abuse is being allowed to continue, what steps will this Government take to ensure that the child does come first and the child's rights are protected? Because at present it seems that until the child can articulate what has been happening, there is no case to answer and the child continues to be at risk of abuse.
Minister.
The Scottish Government does not tolerate any form of abuse at all, and certainly if you look at the way in which our practices are delivered through the prism of getting it right for every child, we want to ensure and maintain the safety and protection of our most vulnerable children. There are a number of opportunities to always refresh guidance and look at ways in which we can improve the situation. Indeed, recently we've achieved 3 significant gains in our manifesto. We've recently published the National Framework for Child Protection, Learning and Development, the Risk Assessment Framework and Child Protection Guidance for Health Professionals. We're also in the process of refreshing National Child Protection Guidance, which was published in 2010, and intend to publish that later this year. There are strict guidelines in terms of how you approach a child when they're in this very sensitive issue and situation. There is guidance on how you interview. There's also opportunities within the Victims and Witnesses Scotland Bill, which is about improving how vulnerable witnesses are treated in court. So there's a range of opportunities there. There's a range of work ongoing, and certainly through the prism of GIRFIC, we always ensure that we get it right for every single child in Scotland.
Question 5, Willie Rennie.
To ask the Scottish Government what assessment it has made of the impact that college mergers will have on access to courses in Fife.
Cabinet Secretary Michael Russell.
The Fife College's presiding officer have yet to submit to me their business case in support of merger, to which the colleges declared their commitment last November, but when they do so, I will consider it carefully. I will also consult with all those who might have an interest in the prospective merger before deciding whether or not to approve it.
Will there any?
There doesn't seem to be any kind of commitment that there won't be any reduction to access to courses in Fife, but I'll continue to press on that issue because that's very important through this change. But I want him to go further and consider whether we should be accessing courses throughout Fife, not just to the traditional places within the region. So I want him to consider whether he'll support a college base within the town of St Andrews, which up to now hasn't had the necessary further education support that I think it needs.
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, Presiding Officer, just to recap, Mr Rennie shouldn't put words into my mouth. I made it clear I haven't seen the business case. When I have seen it, I'll consider it. And, of course, I will consider representations upon it. And I will take what I've just heard as a representation on the business case. Of course, the colleges should look at the totality of the region in which they're set, and that's one of the advantages of regionalisation. So I hope the colleges, as they come together, will consider serving all those who wish courses in Fife, and that will be another benefit of regionalisation, and I'm sure it will get a warm welcome from all Fife MSPs, including Mr Rennie.
Question number 6, Mary Fee.
Thank you. To ask the Scottish Government when a Scottish passport system will be in place if Scotland separates from the rest of the United Kingdom.
Minister Hamza Yousaf.
I would expect the Scottish passport system to be in place upon independence. Easiest applause I've ever had.
I thank the Minister for his answer. On the doorstep and in surgeries, I've been asked by constituents what will happen to their passports in the unfortunate circumstances of... In the unfortunate circumstances of a yes vote in 2014. Can the Minister...
Let's hear the member.
Can the Minister inform the Chamber and the people of Scotland what will happen to their current British passports? Will there be a cost to change it over by 2016? Will the British Government honour the current passports? And will Scottish people have access to British embassies around the world after separation?
Minister.
Presiding Officer, even though I wasn't born in 1979, it certainly sounds like a throwback to those days. What I would say to the member is that she can reassure her surgery constituents. We have always said that we'd have an inclusive and open citizenship unless she has information that the UK Government will give every other nation on this earth dual citizenship except an independent Scotland. We will detail that, of course, in the White Paper later this year, so she can give reassurance that the sky will not fall in, the earth will not swallow up her constituents, and the Messiah will not have to postpone his second coming, come in independent Scotland.
Question number 7, Murdo Fraser.
To ask how many wind turbines will need to be erected to meet its target of producing 100% of Scotland's electricity needs from renewable sources by 2020.
Minister Fergus Ewing.
Officer, we expect and want a wide range of renewable technologies to be developed to help Scotland meet its target, and that would include onshore and offshore wind turbines in the right places, guided by a planning and consent process which we will ensure remains fit for purpose.
Murdo Fraser.
I thank the Minister for his reply. I wonder if he can tell me what is the Scottish Government's response to the recent academic study published by the eminent scientist Professor Gordon Hughes of Edinburgh University, which reveals that whereas newly erected wind turbines have a load factor of 28%, this falls by half to 15% after 15 years of life, and would mean that in order to meet renewable energy targets, we would therefore need twice the number of wind turbines as are currently being proposed. Surely this research drives a coach and horses through the Scottish Government's whole energy strategy.
Minister.
Presiding Officer, it was David Cameron who said, and I quote, "We need more wind farms." The Scottish Government is committed to a mix of sources of electricity, and of course renewable energy supports 11,000 jobs in Scotland, and last year renewable energy contributed a greater proportion than ever before to Scotland's electricity needs. Presiding Officer, there does appear to be division amongst the Tory MSPs on the issue of wind farms. Some are for them some are against them, and others already have one of their own. It used to be, Presiding Officer, that the Tory party in Scotland was unequivocally in favour of more jobs and businesses, but now it looks as though this was just one of their lines in the sand.
Elise Smith.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Does the renewable targets mean that the Scottish Government are likely to overturn a local planning decision which accords with my local constituents' wishes to reject a wind turbine at Annet Hill in my constituency?
Minister.
I apologise to Lane Smith. I didn't catch the very beginning of that statement, although she will appreciate that it's utterly inappropriate for me to make any comment on any live applications. What I would say, though, for her benefit and the benefit for the Chamber, and I hope this is relevant to her question, not all of which, Presiding Officer, I caught, and I will reply to the member in writing later on, that in the vast majority of cases, 2/3 of cases, Scottish ministers have upheld the decisions of local planning authorities. Those are the facts.
Rob Gibson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I wonder if the Scottish Government would consider that the export potential of our clean energy, and in particular our wind energy output, is essential to secure clean electricity security for Scotland.
Minister.
Well, yes, it is, and it's more important than ever before, as illustrated by Ofgem's bleak warnings issued last October and again this week, that the capacity margin in the UK to meet the electricity needs of the UK is dwindling from 14% over peak demand when Coronation Street is on in a cold winter's evening to just 4%. The neglect and negligence of the UK energy policy has led to the pretty pass that it may not be possible to keep the lights on without massive importation from places like Russia of gas. What a pretty pass we've reached. But Scottish renewable energy is now, therefore, more important than ever to keep the lights on, north and south of the border.
Neil Findlay.
In the area between Kirknewton and Shotts, we now have applications or consented or active sites for around 20 wind farms. Now, I know the Minister is a reasonable man, so does he accept that such a free-for-all, resulting in this over-concentration, is undermining the very policy that he promotes?
Minister.
Presiding Officer, I accept backhanded compliments, even from the most unlikely of sources. It would be utterly wrong for me to interfere in the way that his question implies is necessary in the decisions of local authorities. It is the responsibility of each local authority, accountable to their electorate, to take decisions in their areas. And as I have already said, the Scottish Government, contrary to misinformation peddled by some, have supported local authority decisions in 2/3 of the case.
Question number 8, Richard Baker.
Thank you. To ask the Scottish Government what action it is taking to protect communities in the North East from flooding.
Minister Paul Wheelhouse.
We are helping to protect communities across the whole of Scotland from flooding by working with our partners to implement the Flood Risk Management Scotland Act 2009 and providing funding through the local government settlement for local authorities to continue to invest in flood protection schemes. Local authorities can apply for this funding on the basis of criteria agreed by the Scottish Government and COSLA. A total of £73 million was available in this spending review period, on top of £53 million funding that was allocated to existing projects and included within local authorities' general capital grant allocations. Local authorities are also free to allocate additional resources to flooding from within the overall funding provided to them by the Scottish Government and from within their own resources.
Richard Baker.
Can the Minister outline what support has been given to the community in Stonehaven in the aftermath of flooding there, which has seen the closure of the town's Maritime Rescue Institute? In terms of mitigating the impact of flooding in the North East, can he clarify why Grampian is not one of the areas included in SEPA's extended floodline warning service?
Minister.
Well, firstly, on the issue about what support we're giving to the community of Stonehaven, I certainly saw for myself when I visited Stonehaven the support the Scottish Flood Forum is giving to the community in Stonehaven itself. But as to the point about the coverage of the wider coastal flood warning system, much of the North East has already been included in the rollout of the Floodline Direct Warning Service, and indeed the Cabinet Secretary for Rural Affairs and Environment launched the North East Flood Warning Scheme for the rivers Dee, Don, Devon, North Esk in March 2010. A flood warning scheme for the River Carron in Stonehaven is also currently in development and is planned to be rolled out in September of this year. I recognise that the recently launched coastal flood warning scheme for the Firth of Forth and Tay on the east coast, covering Arbroath down to Eyemouth, does not cover community of Stonehaven and does not extend as far as Grampian. But I assure you that we are working on proposals for a flood scheme for the North East Coast following the incidents in December. Unfortunately, the timing of those events, we had announced plans for Forth and Tay at that point, but we are working on trying to accelerate what we can.